Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jerred Moon. The Garage Gym Athlete Podcast is a result of my desire to build better humans, unequivocal coaches, and autonomous athletes. I've spent the last several years obsessing over program design, nutrition, and every other way you can optimize human performance. This podcast distills the latest scientific research with what I've learned and blends it with the not-so-scientific field of mental toughness. We are here to build you into a dangerously effective athlete. If you enjoy this podcast, you can find out more about our training at garagegymathlete.com. And if you want to pursue more into the field of coaching and programming, head to endof3fitness.com. Thanks for listening. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. We have Ashley Hicks, Kyle Schrum, Joe Courtney here today to talk all things garage gym and athletes. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Pretty fine.
Great.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to hear. Let's do a quick, we'll make it super quick update on daily over decades. Just how's everyone think that they're doing in the challenge? Do you plan to do well?
Phenomenally. Yes.
All right. We'll move on to the study. Unless anybody had anything else on the daily over decades.
I'm still behind.
Joe is still catching up.
Ashley
and Kyle are crushing
7
it.
days in less than 7 days.
No, you can't. If only we had allowed the 2 training sessions per day.
I'd still be behind.
You'd still be behind. Yeah.
I'd still be 7 days in the hole.
3 training sessions per day. And speaking of training, after listening to this podcast today and the study that we cover and some of the things that I'll talk about, you may want to start exercising more than once a day. That's actually kind of my takeaway in an odd way. So let's get right into it. We're talking all things running today. So we have a study on running and the brain. Then we have the topic, which will be about super pants and running and where you could, how you could make some of your own. I don't know if that was your takeaway from the article we read, but my takeaway was not about the pants. It was about the shoes, what to do to your shoes.
Strings?
Whoa. Don't.
Okay.
Hey. You gotta tease the people a little bit. Make them listen all the way. All right. So we have ways to run a lot faster and be a whole lot better. And then we're covering a workout today, which is a super complex running Meet Yourself Saturday workout. Takes a long time to explain. It's also our most incomplete MYS green dot.
Yeah.
Like it's the most skipped Meet Yourself Saturday we have.
That's how bad it is.
Yeah. So
That's how rough it is.
Maybe you look at that as a challenge, or maybe you look at that as me too. I'm going to skip it. So we'll get into all things running. We have our resident expert on running here today, Kyle Schrum. He has logged at least a marathon's worth of running in his lifetime, and he has a lot to tell us today about running. All right, so let's get into it. The study today is benefit of human moderate running boosting mood and executive function coinciding with bilateral prefrontal activation. So a fun name. And so what they did was they had 26 healthy participants completing both a 10-minute running session on a treadmill at 52% of VO2 max, and they had a resting control session in randomized order. We can get into more of this. I prepped for a lot of other things today, so I'm going to let you guys talk about the study. I read through it, and I was like, you know what? I know a lot of science on exercising the brain, and so I pulled all of that stuff up, and that's the stuff I want to cover. But just real quick on the study, they were using like the Stroop test, which is a fun one if you've never done it before, to assess your cognitive ability, 2-dimensional mood scale, and big surprise takeaway, running improves your mood and your cognitive ability and makes you a better human. what did all of you think of this study? Any specific takeaways or interesting things to point out?
Well, as the resident expert, I'm going to go first this
he's
week.
He's going to need to jump in there, Joe.
That's fine.
So I know Joe
stay
usually
in my
goes.
lane.
Yeah. I know Joe usually goes first, but I'm the expert here, so I'm
switching it up.
gonna jump in. So as Jerred just said, the main takeaway was that running improves your mood, which I highly disagree with.
Debatable.
So it's debatable. Like this was one study, guys. So let's just not generalize it for everybody.
Throw science out the window for Kyle.
We're done. And it was so 10 minutes running on a treadmill, 50% VO2 max. So moderate pace, which is something that we talk about a lot. Talk about zone 2 work. We do a lot of zone 2 work in our programming, which is really good. And believe it or not, no matter what I'm doing after I finish a training session, no matter what the training session was, I do feel better. So even if it's running, even if I hate it while I'm doing it, I still feel a lot better afterwards. And that's what they measured. They measured a lot of that. The pleasure centers of the brain, they also measured the cognitive function, all those. So people performed better. Their cognitive function actually went up after exercising, which is not super groundbreaking stuff, but just more evidence, like clear evidence. And also how, for me, a big takeaway for garage gym athletes is how simple it can be just to improve your mood and get out and do something very simple. I mean, 10 minutes of moderate pace running, increasing your mood and increasing your cognitive function. Very simple. So for me, the big takeaway is it's absolutely something you should be doing on a regular basis. So, Joe.
So something that I liked about it was that they took a sample, that they did the Stroop test, then they had a 15-minute break, and then they either rested or ran. And then 15 minutes after the run, they did the Stroop test again. So they had the before and the after of that for both groups, which I liked. What I didn't like was that this felt like a very incomplete study in the fact that they just had people do nothing and people running. That doesn't necessarily mean running is the key. It just could be exercise. And it would have been interesting to compare biking or weightlifting and those things just to see what the differences are. Now, I will say for running is if you compare running and biking, there's a lot more coordination. Your brain needs to be much more into it with running because you're balancing. If you're running outside, you're kind of watching where you're going, just like if you're biking outside. But even if you're treadmill running versus stationary biking, there's a bit more coordination and paying attention that you have to do. And even just thinking of myself of like running and biking, I am way more distracted trying to do something with my mind when I'm on the bike. I feel like I'm way more bored doing stuff on my phone because I'm just like, well, I'm just pedaling and nothing else is going on right now. I can basically just close my eyes and do this in my sleep. But running, you have to be a little bit more dialed in brain-wise. So I could see why the running is a bit better for cognitive function and mood and stuff, but just because you're stimulating the brain a lot more. That's why it would be interesting for other modalities to be tested with this Stroop test. I think would be interesting, but it is cool to know that it helps with brain function, mood, all the stuff is good. Yeah, that was my main things. And I'd also say that if they were to compare treadmill and outdoor running would win because
100%.
You're outside, fresh air, sunshine, you're actually like needing to pay attention and balance more than you would on a treadmill. So just things to look a little bit deeper of, like, if they were to continue the study, they could do so much more with it, but just on the surface level, it's like, okay, that's a cool starting point, but what I think I need more for this. So I still enjoy running. I've run at least once. I'm going to start to try and do twice a week now that I'm here. So I do think it's good for you, Ashley.
So some things that I just thought I'd talk about was, they talked about the prefrontal cortex. And so that's just the part of the brain that deals with decision-making, cognitive behavior, and even personality expression. So it makes sense that it would boost your mood. I said, if I had to take the Stroop test after I ran, my mood would change drastically. Like, I mean, it's fine. I hate that stupid thing.
I need to go run again. Like, can I go run again?
Exactly. But it had less interference with the group that was running than with the group that wasn't doing anything. So we talked about it improves mood and cognitive function. But the one thing that I thought was pretty cool, they monitored their heart rate and RPE every minute when they were running to see if they could run at a moderate pace. So this was before, I think, they did the 10-minute testing. And then they took the average of their heart rate as well as their RPE to make sure that they could do to run at a moderate pace, I guess. But their RPE, when they asked them, like, what did you think that you were running at, was actually recorded lower than their actual heart rate stuff. So they were saying, like, maybe because of the whole cognitive thing, that it says running seems to have the potential to influence prefrontal regions to diminish perceived physical effort that presumably benefits exercise performance. So saying that because, like, your mood, your cognitive like functions are improved, that you actually feel less of the I guess hard of the workout. I don't know how to say that any better. Anyways, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Not brainwashed. But I've always said that I'm going to go on a run to clear my head. I know that, like, when I'm upset, or if, Scott and I have an argument, I like to go on a run or go on a walk and kind of come back and then talk. So now it kind of is going to reshape, like, oh, well, maybe go on a run or do a little bit of exercise or bike or whatever before you have to maybe make some decisions for the day, or maybe you have something that it's really going to tax you at work or whatever it may be. This is a great argument for, like, hey, let's train in the morning before you kick off your day. So, Jerred.
All great takeaways. Like I said, I focused a little bit more on the brain and exercise, primarily because I interviewed John Rady on the Better Humanology podcast several years ago, and he wrote the book called Spark, and that book is all about exercise in the brain, and there's just so much research in it. He himself has done a lot of studies. There are a lot of scientific studies in there. So I pulled some stuff from that. There was the Naperville High School study where they took a morning literacy class, and group one, they split the class into two groups. Group one would exercise before class, and they strapped a bunch of heart rate monitors on these high school kids, and they had to keep their heart rate between 160 and 190 beats per minute, which sounds like a lot, but for a high schooler, that's the equivalent of zone 2 for us. They run a little bit faster, right? And then group two, they were allowed to sleep in before this class. And then the improvement at the end of the class for the semester, whatever, was a 17% improvement in reading comprehension in the exercise before class group, and a 10.7% improvement in reading comprehension improvement for the sleep in group. So the ones that slept in did not improve as much as the ones who exercised right before class. But another thing that's interesting about that study, if you dig into it a little bit more, they completed the experiment a second time, and they scheduled the exercise 6 hours before that class, and the results were not the same. And so the conclusion that they came to is that you need to perform exercise right before a mentally demanding task to get the most benefits. So it's not like I exercise at 5 a.m., I'm good to go at 3 p.m. It's more like if you have something that's very mentally demanding coming up, you need to exercise right before it if you want to get the best brain boost. So that's something to keep in mind. And I don't know, I couldn't really find how long that lasts. If I had to guess, maybe 2 to 3 hours max, something like that. There was another study where they did it in adults. This was in 2007. And they just had them, they had to memorize a bunch of like vocabulary words per the study. Obviously same kind of thing. One group exercised, one didn't. And the group that did exercise before the vocabulary studying were able to recall 20% faster after having exercised. So not necessarily more, but they were quicker. They could answer at least the same, but faster.
So what you're saying is that if we ever shared an office, Jerred is going to make us run laps before the podcast.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Don't even get me started if we all worked in the same spot. I don't know if you may have already quit by now. So I think it's good that we're virtual.
We will communicate through Post-it notes.
I think I'm just gonna start training before I read the studies.
Yeah, that could really help. There was the treadmill study, which they did a 35-minute run at 70% of max heart rate, and it increased the creative cognitive ability compared to baseline participants who only watched a movie. This one was pretty cool. What they did, again, 2 groups, one would watch a movie, one would do this 35-minute run. And then they were testing their creative cognitive ability. So not like vocabulary, math, or whatever. They would give them like an object. And one of the examples was a newspaper. And they'd be like, hey, here's a newspaper, list all the things that you can do with a newspaper, as many things as you can think of with a newspaper. And you have a certain amount of time. I didn't recall what the time was, but maybe it's like 5 to 10 minutes. I've done some of these creative exercises before. And the people who watched a movie, they'd kind of get stumped at like, well, you can read it, you can roll it up and swat a fly. They'd have like 3 things, right? And then the people who did the 35 minutes of running, like doubled and tripled the other people's lists. They just could come up with so many more things. So that's cool on the creative side too, to know that if you do have a more creative job, it works really well in both, mathematical, scientific type thing, vocabulary recall, but it also works with being more creative. And a lot of the focus from the book Spark is on BDNF, so brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And they really think that John Rady in the book calls it miracle grow for the brain. And I thought that was kind of a funny thing, but then he has a very specific reason why he calls it that. And in the 1990s, they did a study they put BDNF on isolated brain cells in a petri dish, and those brain cells sprouted new branches from the brain cell, and which is what happens, which happens and is required for your brain to learn new concepts and to put like things together. And so it's actually like miracle grow for the brain. You sprinkle a little BDNF on your brain cells, and your brain actually will grow. And exercise releases a lot of BDNF, anywhere from like 30 to 50% dose, compared to, I guess, doing nothing. And all that to say, you want this BDNF shot. You can get that from cold exposure. You can get that from heat exposure. You can get that from exercise. But I remember asking John on the podcast and even wanting to I was like, what is it? Like, what do I need to do? Like, what's the minimum effective dose here? And it's around 20 minutes up to 30 minutes of aerobic exercise at a pace you can maintain for an hour. Or the definition is also, or feels somewhat hard, which is vague and I don't like. But what they're trying to say is don't get into this anaerobic zone that you're running so fast. You need to stay in an aerobic zone. So that would really be, you need to be in zone 2, maybe zone 3 is where you need to be to get the most benefits. And so it's just 20 to 30 minutes. And if you think about that, the first thing I said helps me a lot more as an athlete who has run a lot. If you tell me to run for 20 minutes at an hour pace, that'll make perfect sense to me. Like, I'm like, I got it. I know what an hour pace is. You want me to do that for 20 minutes. So I'm going a little bit slower for 20 minutes, essentially a zone 2, but I do think you go a little bit higher than that. Mm-hmm. So that's basically everything I had pulled up, because the study is cool and definitely go run for 10 minutes at this moderate pace. And it's going to help. But as Joe said, he's like, what about other exercise? Really, it seems like any type of exercise, but it does seem like the literature is way more aerobic training based. So it kind of doesn't matter what you do, but it needs to be aerobic, because you can go lift weights and that still be aerobic. I don't know if you guys have noticed that from your own training, but you can finish a lifting session and it's essentially was an hour-long zone 2 thing. Like, that's all it was. And so I think that it'd have very similar benefits, if not a little bit more. Joe, to your point of trail running or running outside, you have to pay attention more. I think that's the same in strength training. I think you have to be a little bit more dialed in mentally when lifting heavy loads and everything. So I think that more brain engagement is a big deal. So stay away from the high intensity stuff, go run. And that was my I said at the beginning of the podcast, like maybe I should train twice a day. I don't train until 2:00. My work day's almost over by the time I'm training. Maybe I should start hitting up a 20-minute run first thing in the morning to get my brain going, and then just train again at 2 p.m. for the real session. So I won't actually do that. But if I had something that was crazy mentally demanding, I would consider it for sure.
Maybe sports in high school should make them train first period instead of like, it's always around lunch, because isn't lunch like the longest period of the day or whatever at school? So typically if you played football or soccer or whatever, you always trained later.
That's what I thought was really cool about this Naperville High School study. So they did the study themselves, and they also actually made changes based off of their results. So they they made it to where students' hardest class was after whenever they had scheduled gym class. So like if their hardest class was like physics or something, then they would put physics right after gym class. So they were taking advantage of this, physiological / psychological results you get from exercise. I thought that was really cool. Like very forward thinking school. Like who does that? Like what school administration would care about something like that. So I thought that was really awesome. I don't know if they're still doing it, but it's cool either way.
Yes.
Everybody's moving.
Yeah. Anything else from the run, the brain?
Let's segue into the next run.
Let's talk about more running then. If we're done with talking
more
about running.
Kyle's so pumped.
So I actually got this article.
I pumped about this though. Running's gonna get easier.
Yeah, it's like basically how to cheat running, Kyle. You should be all about it.
How I cheat running is by doing deadlifts.
Oh gosh.
All right, so this is an article by Alex Hutchinson. He wrote the book Endure, really good book. He's a really great writer. He has a piece or like a category, whatever you call it, on outsideonline.com. I highly recommend even like subscribing to his stuff. It's called Sweat Science, and he always covers really interesting topics, and he's writing really good articles. And that was kind of the topic today, because I thought it was interesting. The title of the article is "Are Super Pants the Next Super Shoes?" And he breaks down like these new pants and devices that people are trying to make running easier. And the shoe thing has been widely debated for a while. I don't know if anybody saw, was it the guy who ran the 100-meter Bolt? What's his first name? Usain Bolt. Yeah. So the guy who holds the current world records or whatever, he was kind of complaining at the last Olympic trials or Olympics or whatever it was, because they're wearing like new shoes, right? They have these new shoes that are making people just crazy faster. And I really feel like this kind of technology only matters at that level. Like you throw some awesome shoes on me, I'm not running a 2-hour marathon, right? Like or 2.5-hour marathon. That's just not going to happen. I think it's like supplementation. When we talk about supplementation, like it might help that like fractional percentage over. And I think it really does matter at that level. But when you bring it down to us and what we're doing, I don't know how much it would be helpful, but some of these new technologies, the super pants, I find interesting, not because I want to wear it, just because I think that we're headed down an interesting path as a society. And I think it's cool. So anyway, we can talk about this. I won't talk about it much more. They just have like different versions of these pants that make running a little bit easier. And I think I'll just say what it looks like, and then we can talk about it. So you wear a band around your torso, and then that's held up by suspenders, and you have a compression band around each thigh connected to the torso by an elastic band, and that's it. So if you're thinking like overalls that kind of, I don't know, wrap around your thighs, yeah, I guess is the best way to put it. And if you have ever been aware of your hip flexors before, it makes a lot of sense. Because they're essentially, what it looks like they're doing to me is they're trying to recreate your hip flexors where they don't get tired. In my opinion, it looks like what they're trying to do. So what are your thoughts on super pants, super shoes, anything in general? I'll throw it out there.
Running expert?
Oh, That's me. Yeah. So I thought I thought it was interesting to see, as I was looking at this, that was actually one of my takeaways, Jerred. I really don't think that this is applicable for the vast majority of people on earth. I think there's people out there who, even recreational athletes, who would give this a shot, if it was on the mass market. But I really do think that you're only looking for a fractional percent difference over competition at the elite level. And that's really and actually that's kind of what he focuses on with this article is competitors at the elite level at the Olympics, or at world championships, things like that. So we're talking about professional runners looking for like a 4 or 5% increase in performance, which for them is a big deal. Especially if other people aren't wearing it. But then, so he talks a lot about exactly those shoes that were apparently making people just smash world records, and just kind of introducing this as an idea of, there are people out there working on this. What are the implications of it? Could we actually see this in the Olympics? Things like that. If we see it in the Olympics, I don't know. It would still make the Olympics just as cool to watch for me. That's as far as the Olympics go for me. But I don't really think it has much bearing on recreational athletes. Actually, when I was looking at this, it reminded me of squat suits in powerlifting. So I did a powerlifting meet, a few years ago, and we were required to wear like the singlets for powerlifting, but everybody has to wear a singlet, but the singlet is not performance enhancing. It's simply to make sure that you're moving properly, that you're not it's to keep you from having like baggy clothes where you could like kind of hide like extra movements, like if they don't want you hitching your back or your legs or something, trying to pick up a deadlift, like they want to be able to see you doing that, so that they can no rep you if they have to. But actually, when I was there, it was explained like in the meeting that we had to do before the event started. We weren't allowed to wear like elastic underwear, or just like even like Under Armour top fabric underwear, breathable underwear. We weren't allowed to wear those because apparently a few years ago, this dude put on like 10 pairs of that underwear and made it really springy instead of using a squat suit. And he was participating in the raw division. And so now you can't wear any of that underwear at all. You can't even wear just one pair of it. So, but so you in powerlifting, you have like the geared division where you can wear like the squat suits, and the raw division where you don't wear any of that stuff. And like the geared division, like you see these dudes in these squat suits, and they're like, seeing these guys put this thing on, like it's unbelievable, like watching somebody try to put this thing on just to squat a little bit more weight. You know what I mean? But that's just kind of what I thought of when I saw this. It was something that was really tight, something that kind of gives you more spring and a little bit more power, just to kind of run a little bit faster. So I don't know how much application it would have for our purposes or anything like that. So Joe.
I think I'll add some of these for my Air Force PT tests, just to shave like 10 seconds off of that 1.5 mile run.
I could see it happening with stuff like that.
Yeah.
Honestly, like
Yep.
things where people don't really care, like I think that this could be a big problem in the military. I don't know if the military tries to do, I mean, I never heard any briefs. I mean, I've been out for a while now too, where from like being like a physical training leader and stuff, but we weren't getting like reports on like, hey, check people's shoes to make sure they're not wearing the, whatever he mentioned in here, the Nike Flies, Vapors, or whatever they're
Yep.
called. And so I do think that military could have a huge application.
Yeah, I mean, some of these, depending on how much they can shrink it down, because with technology now, I'm sure there's some small material that you could use to just wear inside of spandex and then just wear it under your clothes. That's where I think technology will go. And then it's like, before certain meets, they're going to have to do like full on TSA strip searches for athletes before they even get going. Just because, everybody's going to try and find an edge here, a little bit there. So I think the standards are going to be very, very like detailed subsections, addendums throughout time. So that's definitely going to make it interesting going forward. But my biggest question, I kept trying to wrap my hand around how the bands worked. And because like when you use a resistance band, yeah, it's going to be easy one way, but like, doesn't it make it harder the other way? And I guess it's your momentum that's kind of driving your foot back, because pulling your foot back is where the resistance is going to grow, but you still have to pull your foot back. So I was kind of curious how that even worked. And I guess it would be once your momentum gets going, it's kind of your momentum that's helping you pull your foot back. And then it kind of slingshots and pulls it forward. So that was kind of weird. And I never would have thought of that, because I would think, okay, it's a resistance band, yeah, it's going to be easy one way, but it's still going to be hard the other way.
Wouldn't that make it easy or harder to stop though? Like if you get running full speed with this thing and your momentum's moving, like wouldn't your momentum carry you further and make it harder to stop? Like so maybe even increase injury risk, like with something like that.
I mean,
I don't know.
Maybe. Well, and then like I read it as because of the resistance of it. So you're just running. So it increased their cadence. Does that make sense? So I just like, I don't know. So I don't think it actually was like preventing, like, I think it just shortened a stride a bit, or like basically made them run faster by 6% or whatever the heck.
Yeah, it seemed like it's shortening your stride and forcing you to take more steps, increasing your
part of
cadence.
it. But if you read in his article, he mentions that the vast majority of energy, 65 to 80%, according to the paper, is wasted breaking your center of mass when your foot slams into the ground. So,
right,
you're talking about, Joey, like it being more, like there's some resistance going back, but there's 80% in some cases, the second your foot hits the ground and is moving back, all your foot is trying to do is stabilize and get you ready for that next step. So that band is probably nothing in comparison to that backwards movement, but then it's very helpful in that forward movement when it retracts. So I think that's the big reason why the band still helps. Because I think if you were to flip this suit around and put it on over your butt and hamstrings, like it wouldn't be helpful, right? Like because you'd have to attach it at the knee and up at the upper thigh, but it'd essentially be adding more resistance to your hamstring opening to be able to take that step. And that would be like a 50% reduction in your running. That might be like a great way to like train running to like kind of like a parachute type mentality or whatever. But I think that's why there's such a big difference.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was segueing into as well, is that the cadence seems like a big change. And I know my Garmin shows it, cadence and stride. I don't really know too much about cadence and stride. I haven't really cared enough to go into whether I need a corrector or what's good or what's bad. So that's probably the first application that you could think to do if you want to improve running, instead of looking at these bits of gear, is to do some research on your own cadence and stride and stuff. Because I know it can be a big deal. I just don't know too much about it. I don't feel myself right now needs to really get into the weeds of that. Ashley, got anything else?
I mean, if you guys pretty much hit everything. I think the thing I took away from this is, good gracious, the things that people come up with these days. Like, it's pretty, talk about brain power. Like, I don't think I would ever come up with a device like this. He talked about two different ones though. And he even talked about like the South Korean one being a little bit lighter and comfy. And then he also talked about how the military kind of took to it a bit. And I could kind of see that maybe for like, I don't know if this would improve somebody's movement if they're carrying large loads, like if they had to ruck something or like buddy carry someone, like if they're in like a combat situation. Because again, like you're putting load on top. Anyways, whatever. But so I thought about that. I said, I don't know how I feel about like people adding this if you're going to, I mean, Jerred talked about it, like elite level athletes. This is probably the only people that it's going to affect. But to me, like the most impressive thing is like what they do with their bodies already. So it's like kind of personally, I don't want to see them with these compression pants or crazy shoes or whatever, because I feel like what they do with just their bodies naturally is stinking impressive. So I don't know. It just kind of sounds like weightlifting shoes or a weight belt or whatever, just kind of more gear, I guess, is what it sounds like to me. And I'll let Jerred talk about the
I just
thing
want to
that
talk
I
about how Kyle completely morphed the topic to talking about lifting somehow. I mean, it was a great parallel you drew there, but it was not lost on me that you were able to do that. That was good work, my friend. Good work.
Did you run before this? No.
He like quickly mentioned the running, and then he was like, "All right, I'm here to talk about lifting." Okay, so we did mention the one that I thought was the coolest, and actually I think had percentage-wise was the best, was the string. So they put latex surgical tubing and tied people's shoes together, and there was a 6.4% improvement in running economy. And to your point that you guys are talking about, really what they think that it did was not just help that hip flexor muscle or like bring that leg forward, but it forced people to shorten their stride quite a bit, which helps with your running economy. And same thing, Joe, I didn't even know which one I was buying when I bought it, but I bought the running heart rate monitor for my Garmin. I didn't know, like, they had like different types, and I was like, I don't know, that one's red, it looks cool.
Yeah.
So I picked that one, but when you buy that one for the Garmin, it adds all this additional data to your running workouts that you don't otherwise have. And it's like how much time is spent on left foot versus right foot, your up and down oscillation, your cadence. Like, it adds a lot of data to your running. And I think that that's really cool and something to pay attention to. And it actually has made me pay attention to shorter strides, trying not to oscillate at all. I can't quite figure out how to get that even 50-50 on my left and right foot, but I'm still working on it. I'm like a little bit off. It's always like a couple percentage points or fractions of a percent off. But anyway, I think that if you were to do this, he mentioned the tripping hazard. I might try it just for fun. Like, seriously? I might, because he did say they're going at a 10-minute per mile pace. So it's a slower pace. I might try something like this on a zone 2 run, just to, I don't know, for the sake of an experiment, right? Try it out. If I fall down and like bust my face, I'll let everybody know. But I'm definitely gonna give it a try if I can find some latex surgical tubing. But who do we have on? Was it Chris Morrissey, Dr. Chris Morrissey, who put a bike tube
for his Achilles?
Yeah, because he had an Achilles injury, and so he put a bike tube. He like duct taped it around his leg and like his foot because his Achilles wasn't working, and so he made a fake one, which is
amazing,
impressive. Very similar here, but I think it's really cool. I think military use is where I can see this being huge. I think exoskeletons in the military are going to be a thing within the next couple of years. I don't even think we're that far off and just think about how helpful that is. It's in the movie Bigger, Stronger, Faster, that movie about steroids, where they talk about having an unfair competitive advantage in competition, right? So like in golf or in baseball or whatever, taking steroids is kind of like against the rules. But in war, there is no such thing as an unfair competition. There's only who's better. And they bring up the example of how the Air Force invented speed or Adderall, whatever you want to call it, for pilots, right? To be able to like think better and faster and all these things. I'm okay with it to a point, and I'm also not. Like, if you can give me a mechanical advantage like a suit, then I'm all for it. I don't like, giving pilots speed, essentially, I'm not okay with, just like I wouldn't be okay with giving a Marine steroids, every Marine steroids, because it's going to make them a better soldier. I think that there has to be a line somewhere, but I do think that something like this would be very helpful just for like a soldier who has to basically ruck march for miles all day, every day, going from village to village, checking things out. Like, yeah, throw on a super pants on the dude and like make it 7% easier for him to walk. Like, that adds up over very long periods of time. And that's where I can see this stuff being really cool. If you're a garage gym athlete and you want to try this out, like, I just don't get the point. It's like you're something like the shoelace thing is cool because maybe it can improve my running, but to make running easier, I'm going to burn fewer calories. It's not going to be as hard. I'm not actually getting better at anything. I don't see a lot of benefit for garage gym athletes, but I do see how it gets controversial in competitions. And I do think it's a big deal in the Olympics and stuff like that, because he mentioned it in the article where when these new performance enhancement things come online, there's a couple of years where people just get away with it and they shatter world records. And then Olympic committees or whatever are like, no, you can't do that anymore. And they take it all away, but those records stand. And so like there were the 3 years that they were allowed to have these performance enhancing shoes, longer spikes, all those things he talks about in this article, those records are forever. And then in 2024, all those things are being taken away. So I do think that it matters there because it's unfortunate. I read The Perfect Mile, which was about the breaking the 4-minute mile barrier. And like Roger Bannister ran a sub 4-minute mile, like on a dirt track with like shoes that are pretty crappy, you know, just like he had no tech and it took forever for other people to beat that. And now with spikes and tracks and all these other things, like it's way different, way easier for people to do. But if you were to take someone like Roger Bannister and give him all the same technology at the same age today, maybe that guy's a 320 miler. You don't know. Like, and that's the stuff I'm always interested to know and learn more about human performance. But I found these pretty interesting. Not a lot of application for us probably, but a cool concept nonetheless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, Kyle, what's this workout? And remember, guys, this is the most skipped Meet Yourself Saturday workout. Very few people can complete it. Very challenging. The gauntlet has been thrown down.
I'm glad that we reserved, so I feel like we got through the study and the topic, a little quicker than we usually do to make so much extra time here at the end for the workout, because we're definitely going to need it.
Yeah.
So really this week's Meet Yourself Saturday is 60-minute run.
All right.
That's the name of it. Because we name them most of the time and you don't really know what it is when you name it. But no, this one is, we kind of spoiled it right at the beginning. 60-minute run for max meters. It's
actually 2-hour run. It's a tricky.
It's 60-minute run. Nope. You're going to do it twice. So no, the workout is, all jokes aside, a 60-minute run for max meters. And that's the entire workout. So my tips for this one come from the study and the topic today. Make sure to wear your super pants for the 60-minute run. Increase your running efficiency. And also, according to the study today, only 10 minutes of this run is going to be pleasurable for you. So just be prepared for that. Only 10 minutes. You're only going to enjoy 10 minutes of it. So make sure to wear your super pants and enjoy those 10 minutes of your run, and just endure the rest of it, I guess. Joe.
I mean, if you can, go ahed and do the Stroop test before and after. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Get a baseline before and then do it again afterwards. And see where you stand.
We need to find a good online version of the Stroop test that we can start throwing into Garage Gym Athlete training. That's always the test they use for cognitive stuff.
100%.
There's an easy free
I feel
one.
like it's, I was going to say,
Ashley's
got
got
a really simple test too. Yeah.
It is
simple.
simple. Yeah. Put it in the programming every day.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
It's in the docs and links section.
Tie resistance bands around your shoes. No, don't do that. I don't know. So you just find a good happy pace. Most times, I mean, if you want to do this in zone 2, that's fine. But I think when you get toward the end, you should probably be getting out of it. But either way, you should be pushing your pace in the beginning. You should try and keep that pace throughout, but you're also so just keep in mind that lower pace. So if in the beginning, it might be within your math zone 2, but then after 30, 40 minutes, try and keep that pace, and you're probably going to be creeping into your 80% heart rate zone. So try not to spark your heart rate early is kind of what I'm getting at. And, I always like on these longer runs, I start off with some music, start off with some good tunes. And then after about 10 minutes or so, I'll switch to an audiobook, and then I just kind of zone into the run and get going.
So it's funny you brought that up, because I said some might tell you to listen to a podcast or audiobook. I cannot do that. So we talked a lot about cadence. And for me, I have to have some sort of beat, so music for me always has done that. And I actually, when the last time we did this, well, not last time, but man, the time that I actually did this without having to do it in zone 2, what Joe's talking about, I actually made an hour-long playlist of songs that I knew would help me keep my cadence tempo up. And I ran with another chick who was pretty much on par at the same pace. But I mean, if you think about it, if you're running a 10-minute pace, you still ran 6 miles that day. Like you just, this is great. And I said, if you're a less experienced athlete and you look at this and you're like, oh, heck no, don't look at it like that. Fartlek the thing, like run, walk a bit, run, jog a bit, like go back and forth and just move for an hour. Like, yes, we say it's a 60-minute run and try to run as much as you can. But I mean, don't look at it and be like, well, I can't run for 60 minutes straight, therefore I'm not going to do this workout. No, you missed the whole point of Meet Yourself Saturday if that's how you approach this thing. So, and then of course, I'll be doing this bad boy in zone 2. Maybe I'll try to like get a zone 2 playlist going. We'll see what I come up with. But I'm not listening to a podcast or a book. I refuse. Jerred, go for it.
I think Joe and Ashley are being way too nice.
I knew he was going to do that. He had a visible reaction when Joe said, "You could even do this in zone 2," and he sat forward.
And
he was
the walking, no, there's no walking in a 60.
Would you rather somebody skip it or do it in zone 2?
Yeah,
skip it, because this isn't
max meters.
This isn't a training session. This is a Meet Yourself Saturday workout, and that's, I think, the difference. So when we're talking about a 50-minute zone 2 during our deload weeks, I'm all about everything you guys just said. Awesome. But what I'm not in a Meet Yourself Saturday 60-minute run, because one, I think it should be a run. And to your point, Ashley, if someone just physically can't do that, okay, maybe you can have some modifications in there. But the point is to find at what pace you could run the entire 60 minutes without walking. That's what I'd like to see, because I think that's going to build some of your mental capacity there. And if you've ever been in the military or seen people run in the military, you can basically run. It's called the shuffle. And you can, but like, just keep it going the whole 60 minutes. You could be at a 17 mile pace, 17 minute per mile pace, but like, you're still like, look like you're running. And it's different. If you actually pay attention to your heart rate, that shuffle still is a higher heart rate. And also, I get what you're saying, Joe, like zone 2 now is not zone 2 later, because the metabolic demand just starts to creep up, and like your oxygen demand, everything is just increases. So by the end, and I noticed this a lot when we were doing BCT, we would have like 40-minute zone 4 workouts. So stupid. And they were just awful. They were so awful. I mean, they're not actually like that bad for you unless you're doing them like every day, but it can really build up your threshold. And what would happen is I would have to start with that. Like even after like a light warm up, I'd have to be running a very fast. Apparently I'm not allowed to say weights or times anymore, because like it's offensive to other people who listen to the podcast. But I would have to run very fast, incredibly fast, for the first 10 minutes of a zone 4 workout. Like to where I was like, there's no way I can freaking sustain this pace. And then my heart rate would just like escalate and stay in zone 4. And then I'd be running this much, much slower pace, but it would stay in zone 4. And so it's like getting there and staying there. So I don't think that you should do 60 minutes in zone 4. That's not what I'm saying. That's a very long zone 4 bout, but getting into zone 3 pretty fast and then fluctuating in and out of zone 4 and zone 3. Cause zone 3 is supposed to be really your performance pace. It's like where you should, it's your race pace, your race day pace. And then zone 4 is like when you're really trying to power out. So like going in and out of zone 3 and zone 4. Those are my recommendations. You definitely can take Joe and Ashley's approach. There's not a right or wrong. There's just each of our opinions to how we would tackle a 60-minute workout. But I think that you should be building your mental capacity here more than anything else. That's just my take on it.
So I guess whenever I consider zone 2 is I take it up for my math zone 2, which is like up to 76% of my max heart rate. So it's not like stopping at 70. Mine's up to 76, 77%, which is basically what I do all of my runs at to that level. So if I were to start this for the first 30 minutes, I try and keep it within that. But then after the next 30 would be, okay, let's just see what I can sustain for the next 30, no matter what my heart rate's at.
And if you tackle
a little
this
bit of addendum
and build mental toughness by tackling this, even if you jog, walk a little bit, I still think it's a meet
Yeah.
yourself Saturday.
Yep.
Well, there is that factor. Most people, and that was a big reason I actually programmed this at the very beginning. Most people have never run an hour.
Right.
Like, and if
it's
you're
rough.
in our programming, you may have done 50 minutes of zone 2, but for some reason, 60 minutes is just different. It's just different. And 90 minutes is different than 60 minutes. They're all very different. But I think I originally programmed this because the guy who would come work out with me occasionally, to be honest, I think he only really came out over on Saturdays, and we do meet yourself Saturday workouts. He had never run an hour before, but he's a very fit dude. Like, he could run, he's in the military, like, but he had never really ran like an hour. And I was like, let's do that today. And it was very, very hard for him. It's very, like, after like 40 minutes, there was just like this visible breakdown, like physically and mentally, to where it's like, I don't want to do this anymore.
I can
And so
relate.
that's where we want to get you. I mean, you did so much running in BCT. I thought you and running were friends now.
We're
Seeing other people.
Yeah. We're colleagues, forced to work together.
Yeah. Well,
Just compared running to us.
Oh, you caught that. Okay.
so we're all running. Okay. And your family is lifting. I get it. That's fine.
We'll take it.
Joe doesn't like it at all.
Joe's super offended.
All right.
Yeah, we give him a hard time enough.
We managed to squeak out quite a conversation about a 60-minute run there.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah. All right. Now let's get into running form. I'm just kidding. We can roll out. So that was your podcast all about running and exercising the brain, running in the brain, super pants. Maybe you can tie your shoelaces together and try a run. And also we have a challenge workout for you this week. So all about running, go get better at it. I think that it does build a lot of mental toughness, specifically running. I don't really feel that way about any other aerobic exercise. Maybe the airdyne, but not really. That's more of like an anaerobic activity on why it sucks. And it's not like this. Running will just suck. That every minute you add to it, it sucks a little bit more. And so it's a good mental toughness builder for sure. But that's it. If you want to be part of our training, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can sign up for a 14-day free trial. We would love to have you. You can run a lot, a little. It's up to you based on which track you select. So you could go on the strength track, where Joe almost never programs running.
Whoa.
And you'll have the three amigos here currently on the strength track. I know that's not true.
I get cursed if I program too much running and strength.
Isn't that funny?
I gotta hide the aerobics in there.
So this has been going on for years. If anybody wants to know behind the scenes of Garage Gym Athlete, we'll have at least it happened at least every other month. Someone would cancel their Garage Gym Athlete membership, and we normally ask for some sort of feedback, and it would be, I'm on the strength track, there was running. And I always was like, I can't do anything for you. Like, we're still like concurrent training. We still want you to be healthy. Like, it's still going to be there, but that always happens on the strength track. And I think it's funny every time.
He had to pre-brief. We did a circuit for 40 minutes, and he was like, don't be thinking, why are we moving for 40 minutes? I'm on the strength track. Like, I was dying laughing.
He already knows. I love it. That's you're getting in their heads before they even get there. That's awesome. So if you do want to be part of any of the tracks, they all have a little bit of their own slant, right? So you can pick what you want. And if you are already on one of those tracks, we really appreciate you, all of our current Garage Gym athletes, putting it in daily over decades, getting the green dots, and making the community awesome. And we really appreciate you guys for it.
And the human program.
And the human program, which is out now, and some of you are already testing out. All right. And that's it for your weekly reminder. If you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you. To the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.